All right, welcome back to Live Impact News here. We have hit the 11 o'clock hour on this Thursday. I guess we've sort of moved into the late morning, early afternoon, and more importantly, we are in day 8 of that Artemis II mission. I suppose we're in day 9, but we've been going over some of our day 8 highlights here over the last 10 to 15 minutes of our show, and we are going to continue with our coverage of this historic mission into space. It's something that we have really paid very close attention to here on 13 News Now because it has been a monumental achievement. It has been history made. It's been something that is going to be remembered forever in the annals of what we've done here on Earth and beyond, as we know. There's the video that we watched last week of that rocket taking off. We got to carry it live here on Impact News, which was really special for us. The 4 astronauts inside that rocket, we've been able to see and hear from them at various points during their mission. But today, we actually have a very, very special occasion here on Live Impact News because we get to hear directly. We've been seeing clips, we've been seeing public interviews and press conferences, but today we're going to get to talk directly to a NASA astronaut. Andre Douglas joins Live Impact News now. Not only is Andre Douglas an astronaut for NASA, he was selected as one of the backup astronauts for this Artemis II mission. If there had been issues with some of the astronauts on that rocket right now, Mr. Douglas would have stepped in and filled that role. And beyond all of that, he's a graduate of Western Branch High School right here in Chesapeake, Virginia. Andre, thank you so much for joining us. We haven't had the chance to meet. I'm Connor, and we can't tell you how much we appreciate you taking a little time to hang with us here on Live Impact News.
Hey, Connor, thanks so much. It's really good to be here. Very excited to chat with you guys about the journey and the mission. What a time to be alive and involved in human spaceflight. It is incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I want to go backwards before we go forwards. I'm wondering, when did becoming an astronaut become a dream of yours? When did you start thinking that was what you wanted to do and what you would actually pursue here?
Yeah, so for myself, I have always been inspired at a very young age. It was probably around year 7 of my life where I was like, I want to be an astronaut. My parents, they exposed me to a lot of different things with respect to astronomy, looking at the stars, and doing ham radio stuff with the Cub Scouts when I was younger. And then really there was just passion for math and science that I developed during school. My dad was an engineer, and he was telling me about the principles of physics and how to build things. And then I love to work with my hands. So there were certain patterns and behaviors as a young kid where I thought, okay, exploring my world here on Earth can be done in space, and that's what I want to do. So, my journey from at a young age to now involved a lot of different things involving sports and building things, a lot of school, but also a lot of operational experience, joining the Coast Guard, becoming a commissioned officer, and leading teams in complex technical areas at Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab. Like, it was a really cool journey, and very happy to be here.
And you mentioned a lot of school. There are a lot of very impressive schools on your resume here. I know you've been busy with a lot of other things, but I still want to extend a congratulations for the NCAA basketball championship for those Michigan Wolverines. I see Big Blue on your resume here. I hope you had a little bit of time to watch the game. And even beyond in your hobbies, a lot of physical activities, sports, outdoor activities in your hobbies. I'm wondering what kind of physical toll being an astronaut takes on the body and how your background has sort of prepared you to withstand that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, playing a lot of sports like basketball, soccer, and just learning how to listen to your body is very important, because when you go out into space, your body is going to change. It's going to adapt to a 0G environment if you're at the ISS, and then, a lunar G environment if you're at the moon. So, the amount of stress that's on your body is different, and your muscles and your organs and even the fluid in your body shifts. So playing sports and understanding, when I'm running track at Coast Guard Academy, not to push it too hard to tear a hamstring, or when I'm playing soccer and trying to figure out when I need to breathe and sprint, all of that stuff plays into when I'm, up in space and have to anticipate certain changes where you don't use your legs for a long time, right? And you don't understand how to maybe focus on your upper body and use that more in space to crawl around. And then when we have to prepare for spacewalks on the moon, the spacewalk gear, the suit itself is going to be roughly 400 pounds, on Earth, and in lunar orbit and on the lunar surface, it's going to be roughly maybe 100 or so. But the dynamics of the body and the moon and all of that's going to be very different. So the movements that we do to stabilize ourselves on Earth will be very different than what we will have to do when we're on the moon. It's going to be very important. So, the schooling is great, but learning about your body, doing those things where you're maybe working on an injury or you're just pushing your limits and knowing when to stop, like it's really good to figure that out now. And so growing up with sports, I loved working out, and you do that as much as you can here at the astronaut office. We look for people who are in shape and doing these things so that they understand their body and human performance, so we can put them in the mission and do good things for humanity.
And another aspect of being an athlete, especially you're talking about soccer and basketball, is that teamwork. I've really sort of been stunned by how much teamwork goes into a mission like this. And not just that, but how close the four astronauts aboard the Artemis are to each other at all times. Every time we see them, they are in very close quarters. You got to have a certain level of chemistry and teamwork. I'm wondering if you could kind of give a little insight into how that's developed and how important that is to missions like this.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that we look for too when we're selecting astronauts is teamwork. Being able to work together even in normal conditions is one thing, but we're going to go to missions where things are not normal, and that's very important to build that strong bond before you go, to have the characteristics of that when you get selected. That's all important because, if you're doing these things at a young age where you're doing basketball, soccer, and even for myself, I was, a big band person, right? I was a percussionist, and you start to understand that you have your role when you're building something beautiful. When we were doing these pieces, with the band and the orchestra, like I was either on the snare drum or the timpani, and I had my part, and then the strings had their part, the trumpets had their part, and you have your own strengths that can make something awesome, right? So you do that to make the mission work where everybody's different. We need diversity in professional skills to make sure we can handle these complex problems that we might not even anticipate, right? We're not going to know about. So that's a big piece. And then from an operational standpoint, when you're flying a spaceship, it's usually one or two people trying to do something. So you might have the pilot who's in deep in a procedure where he's working or she's working with automation, human in the loop, trying to figure out what's going on. But at the same time, you might have somebody in the back seat who's got some sort of a suit issue and they're trying to troubleshoot with their neighboring seat member. And so there's like probably 5 or 6 things going on at the same time when you're trying to do a dynamic situation, and you build skills doing that when you're playing team sports. You're in the basketball team and you're trying to figure out how to score that last basket. Somebody's hurt, injured, you had to sub in, and then you have somebody running baseline and you're trying to do a certain maneuver that you worked with your coach on, and then you don't talk to each other. You have to know, and then you might even have to anticipate what somebody's going to do because a situation changed. So instead of somebody cutting to the baseline, maybe they're coming out to the three to shoot because there's too many people down at the baseline to get the layup, right? So you're learning all of these cool different skills that you don't necessarily get in school alone. You're figuring out how to work with a team where you can't communicate directly, but you're reading the room, you're reading the signals, and it's amazing.
Hearing you talk about playing sports coming up, being involved with music, how that has helped you, even your parents encouraging you at a young age to look up to the stars. It's clear in a lot of ways you've been preparing for this your whole life, right? But then when we narrow it down to this Artemis II mission in particular, you were so deeply involved in the preparation for that. What was that process like, getting ready for this history-making mission?
Yeah, this mission was amazing. I mean, very proud of Artemis II and what they've done so far. It's been incredible. Preparing for the mission has been pretty awesome. The cool thing about it is in this backup role, and this is one of the first, human space flights for Artemis, the backup role, we had to develop a lot of things. We were like, I would say the guinea pigs trying to figure out how we're going to even train the crew. So a lot of the flight control team, which operates the spacecraft on the ground, they have to also train us. And so they have to put the lesson plans together and figure out how are we going to effectively train the crew. So why not better to have the backup crew come in and kind of go through the lesson plan, figure out what's happening. And then if there's anything or lessons learned to pass on to the prime crew, then it's polished up for the prime crew to be able to go through that same training. So, we were kind of like the stunt man, stunt woman team going through and getting banged up, and it was fun. But it was also cool because we understand the mission and what they're going through. I was working the full mission kind of profile training for being a primary crew member, and then at the same time, I was training for the astronaut support person, which is called the ASP. And so that portion was on the closeout crew, which the closeout crew was the 5 people in the white room on launch day, strapping in the crew and closing the doors. And so there's a lot of information and things that we need to do to prep for that job. And so between doing the prime crew training and the astronaut support person training, I was bouncing back and forth between Kennedy Space Center, Johnson Space Center. We would plan for contingency operations when we're doing the astronaut support person and the closeout crew role, because in case there's some sort of an abort or we have to get off the pad, we have to train about, I would say, 20 to 30 scenarios of how to get the crew out of the vehicle if something went wrong. And so that was pretty awesome to see that from that perspective and have a holistic view of what's going on with the Artemis program and find improvements for Artemis 3 and 4 and beyond. So, we were really in a big developmental role trying to support the Artemis mission from being a backup crew member and doing multiple things. And on top of that, we're sitting on console and main control center, a mission control center for capsule communicator, which is the Capcom position. So seeing all different aspects of the mission has been incredible. And we're just hoping to pay that forward and make sure the next crews are ready to go and provide insight.
You speak about those next crews. What does the future hold for you? Are you involved with future Artemis missions? What's next for Andre Douglas?
Yeah, great question. I get it all the time. So, right now we're in the process of figuring out what Artemis 3 is going to be. And then, of course, they're working on 4, 5, and 6. I would say for any astronaut role, we have to be ready for anything, right? And so it's important to be just mission ready, where you're practicing your flights, you're doing all of your Capcom shifts, you're staying operational. And the chief has to balance many different factors, right? There's a bunch of things to consider as far as crew complement, the skill sets, the environments. There are certain things where they're designing missions where there might be radiation limits that limit certain people from flying because they've already had a lot of radiation limits. So it really is hard to determine. And I've not been told what I'm going to do next. So there's no expectation as to what I will do right away. But I will tell you this. We have the space station that's going on. We have a bunch of other vehicles that are going on, and we have Artemis. So as long as Artemis is going to go on, and with the administrator's goal here to put a base on the moon, there's a point where basically all of us in the office should at some point be on an Artemis mission, just as if back in, a couple decades ago, people were going to shuttle and people were going to station. So it's not necessarily about, am I going to do the next mission? It's more about, when people are going to fill the Artemis roles and how we're going to do that. And it's just exciting. What a time to be alive. I still can't get over this picture behind me of what Artemis 2 did. And it's fantastic. So, the future is limitless to what we can do. And I'm very excited to be a part of it, no matter where I sit.
Absolutely, man. I couldn't agree more. You mentioned that picture behind you. For all the resources we've gotten back, the data, the photos so far, what's been the most exciting thing for you to see that's come from this particular Artemis mission?
Man, so on the screen, I'm looking at the eclipse there. That was pretty cool. Where I think on our launch day, April 1st, we were getting that eclipse phenomenon, and so the crew was able to look at some very unique things that, because of timing, it would be hard to do any other flyby. And so we're looking at certain coronal features from the sun and how lofted dust from the moon might be able to be seen in a 3D type way. And that helps us validate certain models that we have back on Earth. And so I thought that was a really cool moment for this mission in the Artemis program. The other thing that was pretty cool was the impact flashes that the crew was seeing on the shaded areas of the moon. And so, I don't think that was necessarily predicted by some of our scientists. And that's a reason why we go and do these missions, because we're going to capture data that is not in the mathematical models that our physicists and scientists have to do. And so it's like, man, we're really completing the square on what the universe is doing. And that's why it's exciting. And I think it's so important for us to kind of push this exploration mindset and the science that we're doing, because honestly, humanity needs it all. And if we're really going to go and do these awesome things, we want to know what our environment really is, right? We don't want any surprises. So the more we can kind of inch our way out and see and scan what's going on, then the better we're going to be when we actually operationally get there to celestial bodies and do other missions.
It's amazing. The most advanced space science in the world can make predictions, and still a human being actually going up there, you can discover even new things, different things. It's amazing. Last question for you. You've been really generous with your time. I want to bring it all the way back to the beginning. You talked about your parents encouraging you early on, age 7, and it kind of going from there. I'm wondering, what does your family think of all this, of you being a NASA astronaut, of these missions that are making history? I mean, what's their communication been like with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. My wife's been very supportive. I give her a huge shout out for being there for me, because, it's not just the astronauts that are going on these missions. The families go along with us, not necessarily physically in the location, but all of the time where they are balancing out the house and the other responsibilities when we're gone. That's important. All of the time where my two sons are not going to see me and they have to respond and adapt, right? They are definitely paying a little bit of the price, right? But there's also a bit of the moments that are very special for them, to see my two sons and my wife watching the launch, close with the families. That was amazing. And to have, the other prime crew and Jenny with us when we were watching rocket launches on the beach for SpaceX, on other parts of the mission, and other training events where I could bring them along and enjoy it. So, I would say it's balanced out to where, yes, there's some sacrifice, but then there are some unique benefits. And it's funny too, where, my eldest son at one point had said, he's my dad. He's my dad. People ask him, hey, he's an astronaut. He's like, hey, he's my dad. And at the end of the day, we are family. And there's a lot of things that go on with this role and this job and this responsibility, but we are family at the end of the day, and I love that. I wouldn't be, I couldn't be more happier without them. So.
That's awesome, man, and we're sure you've made them proud. You've certainly made, Western Branch, Chesapeake, all of us here in Hampton Roads very proud. We appreciate everything that you guys are doing. Good luck with the rest of this mission and beyond, and hopefully we'll be able to talk to you again at some point on our program. Thanks so much for taking a little bit of time today.
Hey, thank you so much. Go Bruins. Go 757. Thank you, guys.
The Go Bruins from Andre Douglas. What a pleasure to be able to have him on today. One of the backup astronauts as a part of this mission. You heard everything that he had to do to help prepare the entire crew to go and make history up there. So that was really special for us here on Live Impact News, for him to take a little time out of his day to talk to us. Again, Coast Guard Academy, University of Michigan, Johns Hopkins, George Washington, right? And then also going all the way back to Western Branch. Great to hear about how, sports informed what he ended up doing, and how being a part of band and music informed what he ended up being. And then, of course, all the way back to his parents and then his family now. Really, really great interview. Glad we were able to have Andre on.